Cleo Scott Brown is a national speaker and writer focusing on issues of race relations, voting, and class. Her company, History Matters Institute, specializes in using history to help people better understand the present with a goal of creating understanding, introspection, and change. She presents history filled with lessons, wisdom, enlightenment, and inspiration. Cleo grew up in the Louisiana Delta town of Lake Providence, where her parents' involvement in a federal voting rights case exposed her to many years of death threats, cross burnings, and other random acts of terror. Her parents' fight to gain voting rights for African Americans after 80 years of disenfranchisement, along with almost 100 years of rural Louisiana history, is chronicled in Cleo's first book, Witness to the Truth. Cleo has also made commentaries on race in the Charleston Post and Courier. Cleo's second book, Raceology 101, was first place winner in the 2018 National Federation of Press Women Nonfiction Book Competition. Cleo is also a graduate of Grambling State University and currently resides in Charleston, South Carolina. So I give it up to Cleo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to start by thanking the committee and thanking all of you for this opportunity to share with you today in the kickoff of the 18th Annual Louisiana Justice Community Conference. Now, I thought about, when I was invited, I know that I have friends that do work similar to what you all are doing. And so it just made me feel especially honored to come and talk to you all today. Now, your topic, mindful lawyering, I think it is so appropriate at this time because of all the things that are coming toward you at the same time. And it's time that we just have to stop a minute and start thinking more about our mental health and our physical health, because all these layers of issues, backed up court systems, then you have to work with your clients over the internet, and they may not have the internet, or their internet may be slow, or they don't even have any technology skills. And then you're working maybe with underfunding or too smaller staffs. And then you throw on top of that Miss Ida with her flooding and her wind. And then you throw on top of that COVID. And then you take away the thing that used to help you at the end of the week or after work, hanging out with your friends and decompressing with your neighbors and your family and having a good time. All of these things coming together. It reminds me of the American statesman who said, "These are times that try man's soul." But whenever I see a lot of things coming at me, I always turn to history. As you heard in my introduction, history is my thing. And why is it my thing? Because one, it always has a lesson to teach. And two, it always has some inspiration to give. So I'm going to invite you all to go with me on a little trip, a little journey down through history. It's going to be my personal history, but I wanted to use my history to introduce you to my earliest superheroes. Now, I'm not talking about Superman or Batman, and apparently you all even know who the superheroes are, because in the opening remarks, you said that the attorneys and the people who did the justice work were the superheroes. So my story is about my earliest superheroes other than my dad, which were actually attorneys. I grew up in Northeast Louisiana, as they told you, in East Carroll Parish. And in the time that I grew up, it was right toward the end of the Jim Crow era. And for those of you all who don't know what Jim Crow is, Jim Crow is was this legal system in place throughout the South. It had been created over decades, and it basically defined what Black people could do or could not do throughout the South. It controlled your movements and your access. So, for example, when I was young, I had to go to the side window to order food at the little, they didn't have a McDonald's back then, but at the little burger joint. I had to go to the back wing of the hospital. You had to go to a different room in the doctor's office. I had to go through the side door into the drugstore. I couldn't sit at the counter and order a milkshake. So it was this system of separation. Couldn't go in the hotels when you were traveling, and it defined everything, and basically said that every non-Black person had to discriminate against every Black person, not because of racism, but because it was the law of the land. And so growing up in Northeast Louisiana, one of the big issues that, of course, arose out of lack of access was getting the right to vote. So in my town, Black people had not been allowed to vote since the 1880s. And my dad felt pushed and motivated that was his cause, to break the system that had been in place since the 1880s. So he heard that President Eisenhower was creating commissions that would travel through the South and take testimony as to why were so few Black people registered to vote in the South. And so my dad wrote Washington and asked if he could be one of the witnesses. He and another minister, a large Black farmer, decided to go down to New Orleans and testify. And when they returned, they discovered that there had been all these meetings and that they had decided to do a full economic boycott against this very large farmer. And so what did that look like? That meant that the Jenners Association and all the parishes around had voted that they wouldn't gin his cotton, they wouldn't buy his soybeans, they would not sell him fuel to heat his home, they would not sell him hay to feed his cattle. And then because farm loans are based on being able to pay them off after the crops are sold, the banks, of course, called his loans. And so all of these things were happening. My dad is like, oh, we need some help down here. So he wrote Washington again. Of course, by this time, President Kennedy had been elected. Robert Kennedy was the new Attorney General. He sent down to Lake Providence this young lawyer. And this lawyer was about as different from the people in Lake Providence as different could be. So he was, number one, he was from Minnesota. Number two, he had gone to private schools all of his life, college preparatory schools. He had graduated from Princeton. He had never been around Black people. He was unfamiliar with the ways of the South or the dangers of the South, but he was sent down to mediate this situation. And so he told me when I talked to him when he was in his 90s that he came to Lake Providence feeling, funny and out of place, and what was he going to do? But he said that when he sat down with Reverend Atlas, he discovered that Reverend Atlas was a farmer just like the farmers he knew back in Minnesota. He had the same dreams and aspirations for his children as the farmers did back in Minnesota, and that they learned that they did actually have a lot in common. That same attorney went back to DC and talked to Robert Kennedy, got them to take over the voting rights case and sent down another young lawyer in his early 30s who argued that case successfully. And because of those lawyers and their teams that surrounded them, Black people got the right to vote after 80 years of disenfranchisement. And not only did Lake Providence, East Carroll Parish get the right, but because of that, then Madison Parish, Black people got the right to vote. And then because of the two other parishes, then Tensall Parish finally gave Black people the right to vote. So all of this is in the 60s. But I tell this story because sometimes we forget, or maybe we never even knew, what it is like to be poor and at the mercy of a legal system that you probably don't understand, in a courtroom where you might not be respected, feeling powerless within this system that seems to offer no chance for justice unless you have good legal representation. So we know that the work that you've chosen to do is hard, and your clients are marginalized and they lack access to justice without you. There are often too many of them, and you're just feeling overwhelmed and overworked and maybe underpaid and feeling maybe even unappreciated. And you find yourself asking, did I listen enough? Was I patient enough? Did I ask the right questions to ensure that my client got the best chance in court? Could I have done more? Sometimes we can get so focused on what hasn't been done that we never stop to celebrate what has been accomplished. And this reminds me of this story. And the story is called The Starfish. And it goes like this. There was this old man who liked to walk the beach every morning. So on this particular morning, he came out. It had been a big storm the night before. And he looked down the beach and he saw it was littered with thousands of starfish. They had been washed ashore and they spread as far as the eye could see. And as he was walking along, he came up on this young boy who was eagerly throwing starfish back into the ocean one by one. Puzzled, the old man asked the boy, he said, "What are you doing?" Without looking up, the boy simply said, "I'm throwing starfish into the ocean. The tide washed them up. They can't get back by themselves. And when the sun gets high, they're going to die unless I throw them back into the water." The old man chuckled. "Son, there are thousands of starfish here and only one of you. I'm afraid you won't be able to do and make much of a difference." The boy picked up a starfish and he gently tossed it into the ocean. And turning to the man, he said, "Well, I just made a difference for that one." So, for every one of you who may leave work asking if this work is worth it, know that what you do matters more than you can imagine. Each and every day you get up and go to work for your clients, you are making a difference for that client. So today, on behalf of all of us who could have ended up in a totally different place, for those of us who were afforded new opportunities because of you who helped others to see our worth, people who thought they had all the power, I say to you, thank you for being there. Thank you for being a hero to the hero list. Thank you for taking the time to explain legal terms and options to those who know so little about the law. Thank you for getting up and doing your best, even when you don't feel your best. Thank you on behalf of the ones whose lives your expertise changed, who never bothered to give you thanks. Thank you on behalf of that client who sang your praises to everybody else, but who's never said anything to you. Thank you on behalf of that family who will not be sleeping in the car because of you. Thank you on behalf of that mother who is now receiving much needed services for her children. Thank you on behalf of the fathers and the mothers and the daughters and the sons who do not have to pay a huge price for something small that they did. Thank you on behalf of those you helped to get a deserved second chance. Thank you for balancing the scale of justice and standing between the powerful and the powerless. Thank you for changing the world. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, it's hard to even think to follow that up. Cleo Brown, thank you so much for being with us today. We greatly appreciate it. Cleo Brown's book, Witness to the Truth, is incredible. I read it, it is outstanding. I am so thankful for her to be here with us today.